In the winter months of 1959, a group of 9 young, experienced hikers began their journey into the Ural Mountains of Russia. This wasn't the first cold weather trip that these hikers had taken, but tragically, it would be their last. During the trip, the hikers encountered something in the supposedly desolate region that led to the deaths of the entire group. What exactly happened that night is still unknown, but the incident has since become one of the world's greatest mysteries, with the details and evidence being some of the most shocking that I've ever investigated. So to preface how we know so much about this story, cameras and diaries belonging to the group were actually found at the campsite that show the actions and the thoughts of each of the 10 hikers. And because of the cameras found at the campsite, many of the photographs used within this video are going to be actual shots taken by the Dyatlov group. The story of the Dyatlov Pass incident began at the Ural Polytechnical Institute, where a group of current and former students formed a crew to trek across the Ural Mountains. Now, the ski trip was not what you would expect from a group of college students. Each of the members of the 10-man group were certified Grade 2 hikers, and the completion of the trip would make them Grade 3, which at the time was the most prestigious hiking certificate in the Soviet Union. Because of this, the trip was quite serious, with booze and cigarettes being left behind in order to avoid distraction. The goal was for the hikers to reach the mountain of Gora Orton, and the track that the hikers would be taking was rated at the highest possible difficulty. Still though, the group remained confident that they would be able to complete the journey, as they were properly prepared and properly trained. Their journey started on the 25th of January, as the group began traveling towards the village of Vizhai. Once there, the hikers rested for the night and began their hike on the 27th. But for one of the hikers, bad luck would strike early. Just one day into the hike, the then 21-year-old Yuri Yudin began to suffer from severe joint pain. Yudin had been plagued by many health problems over the course of his life, and the limitations it placed on him were obviously quite frustrating. But in this case, his untimely health problems may have actually saved his life. With the pain in his joints becoming too much to bear, Yudin decided that he would only slow the hikers down if he stayed, so he said goodbye to his team and he headed home, completely unaware of the tragedy that was soon to unfold. The departure of Yudin left the group with 9 people, 7 men and 2 women. The leader of the group, Igor Dyatlov, was said to be extremely knowledgeable and experienced, and by all accounts he was a very well-respected leader. As the group traversed through what has now become the Dyatlov Pass, severe weather had caused them to lose their bearings and eventually end up on the side of the mountain Kolatsaikal, or as it was better known by the local Mansi tribe, Dead Mountain. It was late at this point, and the weather was anything but stable, so Dyatlov made the questionable decision to pitch the tent and hunker down until sunrise. It's believed that none of the hikers would make it that far. In the midst of their trip, Igor Dyatlov had told Yuri Yudin as he was leaving that the group would send a telegram once they had returned back from their journey. Dyatlov believed the trip would likely take 16 days, but a few extra days were possible due to the unpredictable weather of the region. Yudin had waited for the telegram for weeks, but it never came. This caused him to report the group as missing, and by the end of February, a search party was underway. On the 26th of February, a search party was able to locate the tent in which the hikers had spent their final night in. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that the tent was cut open from the inside by one of the hikers. With these hikers being as experienced as they would not have done this unless they were extremely spooked by something, and the condition of the tent shows that the group likely cut the tent open from the inside in order to flee from something. And think about how crazy this is. Something had to scare them so badly and make them want to flee so quickly that they sliced open their only bit of shelter. Not only this, but the hikers had fled their tent so quickly that most were not wearing shoes, and none were properly dressed for the negative 30-degree temperature, with some venturing out of the tent in only their underwear. Perhaps even more shockingly, the footsteps of all 9 of the hikers were discovered heading away from the campsite, which revealed something strange. Rather than the footprints being sporadic, as one would expect if they were running away from something, they were instead extremely organized. One by one, the hikers walked single file down the hill in their bare feet and socks with hardly any clothes on, as they slowly began to freeze to death. Between the cut-open tent and the single file walking, it's already very clear that something very unusual had happened that night, but things only got stranger as the bodies began to be discovered. Each and every one of the deaths on the Dyatlov Pass seems suspicious. Investigators set out on the morning of February the 27th with high confidence that the members of the group would be found alive. The tent was located and the footprints were located. Now all that's left to do was find these extremely experienced hikers. While combing the area around a patch of trees, a member of the search party noticed that there was something brown sticking out of the snow near an old cedar tree. As they approached, they noticed that all of the branches on the lower part of the tree had been broken off, which might have suggested that somebody had possibly tried to climb it. Remains of an old fire were found under the tree as well, and next to this fire was where the first bodies